Hello again, guys. Okay, so today's tutorial will be creating falling leaves. Any one of you that needs to have things falling or objects falling or any form of particles falling, you can use this tutorial as well. Okay, so let's create a tree. You guys should know how to do this already. Create standard primitives. You want to change standard primitives to AEC extended and choose foliage. Let's use our typical American elm. As usual, it's pretty big, so we want to put the size down to about 35 feet. For this purpose, though, we would want this tree to be a bit taller because we want to see the leaves falling. So what we're going to do is modify this tree. So to do that, we're going to add a editable poly modifier, editable poly, and this is the same editable mesh, rather the same procedure that you use to get the trunk to be longer. I want to select the trunk vertices and just make it a little longer. There, good. So now we have some distance to have falling leaves. Alright, great. Now to actually create the falling leaves, we're going to actually create what's called a particle generator. In Max world, a leaf can be considered a particle. There are many things that can be particles as well, such as smoke and stone, snow and rain and stuff like that. So we're going to head on over to create, and then you want to click the drop down list and change it to particle systems. Now these are some pretty awesome particles here, things like snow and spray and stuff like that, but we're going to use the one called blizzard. So we're going to click that, then we're going to draw an icon on screen. It's going to look like a plane. This is the source of the particles. So just by drawing this, if I hit play, notice that you see particles being shot out of this little icon here. So those particles are going to be your leaves. We're just going to modify it a bit so that it looks more of a falling nature, more like a falling nature. So we want to use the move tool, and I want to put this particle generator in the middle of the tree. So now we have the leaves, or representation of the leaves falling. The next thing we want to do is we want to get more time. We only have about 100 frames, so let's increase the time to about, I don't know, 500 frames thereabout, depending on your animation. Alright, so now let us modify this object here, which is a blizzard particle system. So you click it and go over to modify, and there are a couple options here. What I'm suggesting is that you actually maximize your modify panel, because this has a ton of options. So I'm going to just drag it over. So I'm seeing all of these options here having to do with these particles. Now the first thing we want to do with these little dots here is turn them into something that looks like leaves. So on the particle type, we can change that to we're going to make sure that is on triangle. Okay, so that is triangle. Then next we want to change our viewport display from, these things are called ticks, and change it to mesh. So these are actually little meshes now, and we're going to just use these as leaves. We could get more detail later on, but let's just use little triangles as leaves. So now let's make the particle size bigger. Where is the particle size? Let's increase it. I think that's about it. Let's hit play and see what we have. Okay, so these leaves are falling pretty quickly. So the first thing we want to do is slow them down. So let's look for speed and just decrease that all the way down to maybe like that. So if we hit play again, that's a little bit better. The next thing is that this is only emitting, I believe, a few leaves. It's only emitting leaves for Here it is, particle timing for 100 frames, and it will stop emitting leaves after 30 frames. So we have 500 frames here, so we want it to emit leaves for 500 frames. We don't want it to stop emitting leaves until 500 frames. And we want the life of the leaf. This is when the leaf starts to fall. Each leaf will live for 30 frames. So we want the leaves to live maybe a little longer, like for 100 frames, which is like 3 seconds. So after 3 seconds, the leaves will quote unquote die or disappear, rather. So if we hit play now we can see we have a continuous amount of falling leaves. Still doesn't quite look like falling leaves, but it's getting there. So the first thing is that these particles, these leaf particles, are way too big, so let's make it way smaller, like that. There we go. Still looking a bit robotic, so let us slow down the speed. Now a trick you can use is actually leave the timeline running and then tweak the values, and then you get to see the effect of it in real time. So let's slow this all the way down, all the way down. There we go. Even more, even more. There we go. Now each leaf is actually living for 100 frames. So after every particle is born, it will live for 100 frames, or about 30 seconds, and then they will start to disappear. So you can actually increase the life of the frames so that they actually last longer. Alright, so that's looking like leaves. You can mess around with some options to let it look a little more real. You can increase the variation, so you can have some leaves falling before some, so you know it looks a little bit more natural. You can increase the tumble rate, where it will just allow some leaves to rotate differently than others. What else can you do? You can also increase the variation of the particle size, so some leaves can be bigger than some. Let's vary them a little bit. Right, so that pretty much will give you a decent leaf animation. Let's change the color. You can add material, but in this case we're just going to change the color to a similar color to what's here, so we'll just pick a green. There we go. And if I hit play now, let's see what we got. There we go, we have fallen leaves. Wasn't too hard. That was about 6 minutes. So good luck.